All right, everyone, it's a loaded day. We're talking about the possible expelling of a senator and InfoWars getting, basically ham-fisted by Twitter and Apple. But we got to talk about Obama's speech. Not too much because most of it's just the standard Obama speech stuff. Basically, I want to ruminate on the unhealthy obsession, the rather morbid fascination with Nazis that's shown by the Democratic Party. Obama's big line of the day was, "Oh, how hard can it be to say Nazis are bad?" It's like Trump did say that. He said that all hateful radical movements basically should be judged, should be mocked and ridiculed and are bad, and that there were people at Charlottesville that were not bad people, what he was referring to. And if Trump's verbiosity wasn't sometimes challenged a bit, what he meant to say is fairly obvious, which was, there were protesters there that weren't white supremacists, weren't Nazis. They also weren't Antifa. They weren't being violent. They were the ones being targeted by violence on all sides. And this is what typically happens. The news cameras are always going to point at the people that are chanting loudly and waving torches or throwing rocks. They're not going to focus on the vast bulk of people at any protests that are lawful. It's just the way that the news tends to work. It's the way that opportunists tend to operate. But Obama shows the obsession that is held by the left with this issue. I seem to remember that a common criticism of Obama, and this was technically true at the time, especially by the Tea Party, was that he wouldn't use the words Islamic terrorism. That he would just say radicals or extremists or something, much like the Democrats do now. As far as I know, there has never been an instance where he used those specific words and condemned that one specific group individually. The fact that Trump is not ruminating on one single, very small, hate-filled group of people to the exclusion of others is that his message is America first. Now, you can say that that's not true or that that's just a slogan. Okay, yeah, slogans are always empty. We gotta understand that. America first means nothing. It's just a fucking political slogan. I happen to believe that Trump is putting America first with his tax and trade deal structure, the tariffs that he's waging against other countries to get them to remove theirs. You look at Canada right now, it's like falling apart compared to us. We're doing just fine. As always, the proof is in the pudding. Is the economy going well? Yeah. It was very funny to see Obama try to take credit for the current economic situation. Notice he didn't make that speech after the stock market shuddered, or after that one jobs report was ticked downwards. He never tried to take credit for that economy for that particular quarter. Every other quarter he wants to take credit for. We are now 2 years basically into the Trump presidency. This is not the Obama economy. It's the result of mass deregulation, tax breaks, and higher consumer confidence. That's what it's the result of. It's the Trump economy. What is Obama? This is sort of like Obama with Bush. It's like, the economy is going south. It's the Bush economy. Well into his presidency, he kept rambling about George W. and blaming him. I think it was 3 years in before he started owning up to the fact, we shovel ready wasn't entirely shovel ready. Yeah, we made some mistakes. I understand that, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing. Let's give credit to Obama where credit is definitely due. He is much better at strategy than almost any other Democrat, and here's why. Here's what he's done in a calculated way. He almost never talks. He almost never gives a speech now. He almost never talks about foreign policy. He never talks about the economy for obvious reasons. I think that particular part of this speech will bite him in the back. He's a master at political strategy. He's very good at it. Again, much better than all the other Democrats. I can't think of another Democrat other than oddly enough Gillibrand that's better at political strategy because of the way she's maneuvering herself for a 2020 run it's got a 90% chance of occurring and probably would be fairly successful. She'd be a top-tier candidate from day one. Here's why. He knows that absence makes the heart grow fonder. People are growing in nostalgia for Obama. The liberals are especially. They pay attention to him. As opposed to, look at what the Clintons have done. Since day one of the Trump presidency, they never stopped campaigning. Every single day, they said something, usually incoherent and stupid to any independent voter like myself. And so there's no absence, therefore there's no fondness. With Obama, he said, bye. Yeah, it was a great time for these 8 years. Yeah, I think it's regrettable that Trump won. I'm going to shake his hand, go to the press conference. I'm going to disappear. Buys his house in D.C. I'm surprised he didn't go back to Hawaii. It's like, what are you doing with your life staying in the D.C. climate? Why? It doesn't make any sense. Go back and eat the good Hawaiian food. Get some fucking sun. That's what I would do. Trust me, if I was a president, if I had to deal with all the slimy-ass politicians and judges and lawyers and fucking lobbyists and stuff, I would go to Hawaii. I'd say, I'm gonna get this beach mansion made entirely of bamboo and thatched roof. It's like 20 rooms. I'm gonna stay there for the rest of my life. And I'll build a separate little like McMansion structure. That's where you get 3 or 4 security agents that stay with you after you've been a president to make sure that like the Russians don't abduct you or something. And there'd be like a bamboo wall around it all. It'd be right on the beach. Perfect life. 20, 30 years on, and you're an old man. You're sitting there by the beach sipping a martini. Sounds perfect. Why is Obama staying in D.C.? It's like, are you a masochist? Are you a glutton for punishment? It's like Obama. At this point, Obama tends to be, oddly enough, one of the more honest Democrats. The Democrats have fallen that far from grace. I wonder how much they had to pay him to give this speech. I wonder how much they had to pay him to come out of political hiding and actually say something, because he's very reluctant to do so, and that's part of his strategy. When he does speak, it carries a lot more weight because you're not used to it as much. He realized he did this in the last half of his presidency when his poll numbers were, only mediocre. They were roughly where Trump's are right now. What did he do? He just didn't talk for a while, and then when he gave a speech, it was more well received. He realized this. Trump, by the way, should try this. I think he is at the moment. I think for the last week or so, he's been a little bit more quiet than usual. I think what he's doing is it's the silence before the storm, basically the October surprise period. He's going to hammer the Democrats for a few days right before the election and try to get in a few extra political points. I would strongly encourage Trump, switch strategies and start haranguing from a libertarian perspective about tech censorship and about, increase, tax reductions, further reductions. Hammer away on the economy, but also add in Citizens United as a wedge issue. It would work, probably. It'd give you a few extra points of approval. You start singing Rand Paul's tune on Citizens United. The Democrats can't defend against it because they're taking all the corporate money. What are they going to do? Hypocritically chastise the Republicans? Trump's not getting corporate cash donations, not nearly as much as most Republicans have, and not nearly as much as any of the mainline Democrats are. As far as Obama goes, though, it's a symptom of the Democrats' party, the Democratic Party's problems, that they constantly talk about Nazis. It's like they want you to focus on this one hate-filled group. They are specifically white, specifically ethno-nationalistic, and oddly enough, socialists, left-wing. Now, usually the term Nazi is used for the far right, which is, a misnomer, but it's the way that they see history. It's kind of wrong. Why aren't they talking about communism? Communism killed tens of millions of people. Communists today get violent. We see Antifa, they're ANCOMs basically, which is to say communists. There's no such thing as an anarcho-communist because they can't coexist. They throw rocks at people, they throw piss at people, they beat people down in the streets. That's not hateful, that's not violent. Then you have groups like Louis Farrakhan. Louis Farrakhan sitting, 2 seats away from Bill Clinton at Aretha Franklin's funeral. He's a rabid racist by especially the Democrats' standards. He's also an anti-Semite in the most literal, absolute sense. In the objective sense, he's like, oh yeah, Israel, oh terrible. Oh, Jews, oh my God. Louis Farrakhan, it's like, he's all hot under the collar about the issue. Yet he's hanging out with several top-ranked Democrats, with Sharpton and Jackson and Clinton at this funeral, and the cameras pan away. They don't even want to show him on TV with these people. He's a hate-filled individual in the most literal sense. Like, well, I hate this group, I hate that group. Some of these identitarians, they're actually not hate-filled. They're not stand in what you would consider the standard sense. They're not Nazis at all. Some of these people are basically anarchists of a branch. They're basically like anti-communist movement is meshed in. You've got they constantly talk about the Proud Boys having like extremist views and stuff. It's like, no, they're not an identitarian group. There was an article a few days ago and I was going to do an video on this, but then it was like dated. There was too much other stuff to cover about where they were talking about how the Proud Boys had members that weren't white. And it's like, oh, why young men of color are joining extremist movements? Well, maybe it's because they're not actually ethno-nationalistic. They're not identitarian. They're not extremist at all. These groups get called names by the actual identitarians of today in some cases, by some of the more rabid individuals thereof. You've got to be part of the internet culture to understand this, though. If you're working for Politico and you don't know anything about it, or you're a normie American and you don't really use the online world enough to have encountered these groups, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. You don't even know what Gavin's beliefs are, what Mulnew's beliefs are, what it was Richard Spencer's. You don't even. You've never talked to them. You've never watched their material. You don't know what they believe in. You're just passively absorbing whatever CNN or the Democratic Party says. Obama comes out, rambles about Nazis for 5 minutes, as though Trump didn't disdain and disavow every variant of hate there. It's sort of like when the Ku Klux Klan got involved, and they're like, well, you must disavow. And he does. And what do they say? Well, you didn't do it fast enough. Shame on you. Meanwhile, you've got the Democratic candidate is a long-standing friend of one of the former heads of the Ku Klux Klan. Nobody challenged her to disavow or thought anything strange about it. Bigotry and hatred. Trump's not a bigot. No, absolutely not. He's a New York Democrat. He's a New York City business Dem from Wall Street. He is not a bigot. He does not care what color your skin is, what genitals you have or desire, or anything else about you as long as you pay him money. He does not care. He has a certain crowd of people that he hangs with. He doesn't give a fuck what color you are. Trump doesn't give a fuck. He's not a racist. Everyone's saying they're hoping that you'll just passively absorb the idea that he's a bigot based on the fact that the Democratic Party and the corporate media have said so over and over again. And because he's the president, he can't do anything about the fact that he's being defamed on a daily basis, or they say he's attacking the free press, even though it's not a free press. They're colluding together, taking marching orders from the Clinton campaign, among others, and that's what's actually happening. But Obama is an effective speaker, much more effective than any other living Democrat at this time. I would say Bubba Bill, in his more cogent moments, would top him. But Bubba Bill has fallen totally out of favor. Now he's just known as the creepy former president. He oogles Ariana Grande, and he raped people probably, and so he's fallen away from grace. The liberals have nominated Obama as their greatest presidential figure. They rank him only below Franklin Delano Roosevelt among Democrats. He's ahead of JFK in the popularity within the Democratic Party. I think that's amusing. I think it's fucking hilarious. And divisive in some cases. But part of that is because he knows when to speak and when not to speak. A hell of a lot of politicians could really use Obama's advice when it comes to campaigning. That's about all. Peace out.